suma umutima wandi wasumina mulechitefu mulechitefu suma umutima wandi wasumina mulechitefu umutima wandi wasumina mulechitefu tamukokola yawe tamufirwa mwechilivo chakale yawe munafikinisha ifila yo mwana ya abana benu delo ine delo lela patrishi wiyeno mwewani yawe kanitinda kanibemba yo mwelechitefibia mwelechitefisuma umutima wandi wasumina mulechitefibia mulechitefisuma yawe umutima wandi wasumina mulechitefibia umutima wandi wasumina mulechitefibia
Mutima wanga ni wasura na chifundo chano kadara ni viva sanidari samanari soyano ikayona mulechitefibia mulechitefisuma umutima wandi wasumina mulechitefibia
mulechitefibia mulechitefisuma umutima wandi wasumina mulechitefibia
Hello, everybody. A very good afternoon to you. Please tell me in the comments below if you can hear me. If you are within the sound of my voice, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule today to spend a few moments with me here on SML TV. Thank you. Before we begin today's broadcast, and I won't keep you long, I'll be here 25, maybe 30 minutes maximum. I'd like to do a few shout outs to you. Movita, Mundia. Here it is. Let's say hello to you. What are you saying, Movita? You're saying, I guess it's cadarism and failing to tame hate speech and tribalism. Good afternoon. A very good afternoon to you. That's your opinion. Hi, everybody watching us from where? Tell me also, if you can, tell me where you're watching us from, so that I give you a proper shout out. Here it is. Shileshe. Is it Gabriel? Gabriel is watching us from Mars. Gabriel King, bless you, watching us from the planet of Mars. Say hello to Elon Musk for me, please. Owen M. Israel is watching us from Kabwe Town. Chola is watching us from, where is that? Roma. Bless you. Thank you. Guys, thank you so much. As always, I'm always grateful that you take time to spend a few minutes with me. I'd like to talk to you about something. It's been on my heart last few days, and I feel it incumbent upon me to share it with you. We're living in very perilous times, as everybody knows. And I realize that sometimes when there is a catastrophe, not sometimes, oftentimes, when there is a catastrophe, when there is a rift in a nation, we look to our leaders. Why do you think we do that? I mean, why don't we look to people that are not our leaders? Because leadership, John Maxwell once famously said, everything rises and falls on leadership. Now, for you to understand what John Maxwell said, I often give this example. That, let's say, for instance, here in Zambia, we have a different system. Bus stations are basically manned by individuals. It's not like it used to be years ago. It was the municipal, the city council. Bus stations or impromptu bus stops are manned and run by individuals. Now, anytime you come to a bus station and you see that the bus station is filthy, it's chaotic, it's not well organized, the call boys are smoking and drinking at the bus stop, there's a lot of ruckus, there's a lot of unwanted behavior, that falls down to the leadership. Whoever is the leader of that bus stop, he's the one that set the tone for that type of behavior. So when John Maxwell said that everything rises and falls with leadership, what he was saying was, depending on who you have as a leader, the environment follows suit. Hear me. And so it is safe, it is accurate for us to assume that a leader sets the tone for a nation. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you or pretend that being a president is easy. I'm not going to sit here and try and suggest to you that occupying the seat of president is like tiptoeing through the tulips, or it's like walking through a park. It's not easy. It doesn't matter if you're the president of Cambodia, whether you preside over an African nation or an Asian nation or a European nation. As long as you're a leader, being leader is very difficult. Abraham Lincoln once famously said, you can please some of the people some of the time, but oh honey, you can't please all of the people all of the time. There's always something. So I said that as a prelude to tell you that leadership isn't easy, but it is absolutely vital. Now, remember years ago, there was this famous film. I think Rob Reiner directed this film. It starred Michael Douglas. What's his name? There's another guy. The Fox guy. The guy from Back to the Future. The film was called The American President. And there's a scene in that film where one of the characters said, and I got to throw it up here. He said, in the absence of genuine leadership, the people will listen to anyone who steps up to the microphone. I want you to get that. And then he went on to say that people want leadership. They're so thirsty for it that they'll crawl through the desert towards a mirage. Do you know what a mirage is? For those of you that have been stuck in the middle of a desert, if you're walking through the desert, you've had no water, you're exhausted, you're standing on the precipice of death. Vultures are circling around you, above you, and you're about to die, and you know within your heart that if you fall to your knees, that will be the end of you. And you look up and you see in the distance, and you see a river or a lake. But your mind is playing tricks on you because that is a mirage. It's called a mirage. It appears to be a river or a body of water, but it's not. Because of your exhaustion, because of your condition, because of the heat, and because of the way the light hits the sand, it gives off the impression that there's water in the distance, but it's just a mirage. It's not real. It's only in your head that you see the water. So, let me backtrack so that you understand what the word mirage means. People want leadership. They're so thirsty for it, they will crawl through the desert towards a mirage. And when they discover that there's no water, they will drink the sand. I put sane, goodness. Let me correct that. See, this is the problem with being a one-man show. You make mistakes. See there? Let me correct that. Sand. They will drink the sand. Guys, do you know what an executive decision is? An executive decision. Have you heard of this? You hear it all the time. He needs to make an executive decision. An executive decision, here it is. Let me throw it up here for you. An executive decision, an important and far-reaching decision made by someone with executive powers. The president, the head of state, has executive powers to make executive decisions. The very first thing, and I know the title of this broadcast is the 2 biggest mistakes that President Lungu ever made. Now, you must understand, I happen to like President Lungu. He's very cordial. He's someone I've met on several occasions, about 3-4 occasions, and every time I see him, he's just the warmest guy. And let me tell you something else. You're not going to believe this. I speak to many people, okay? Now, unlike some of you, I'm able to sit down at a table with the Reds. I'll talk to the Greens. I have friends across all the political parties. I'm not one of this is the reason you never see me wearing colors. I don't wear colors. That's deliberate. I don't wear PF regalia or UPND regalia or PAC regalia. I don't wear any of those things because I don't believe in that. I don't believe that you have to wear regalia to identify. I think if you're who you are, you're who you are. And as a result, or consequently, what I do is oftentimes I'll speak to people from different political parties. I have so many friends in the Patriotic Front, even in the higher echelons of the party. I have so many friends in the Red Party, so many friends in MMD, tons of them. One day I was talking to a guy from the Red. If I told you who he was, you would instantly know who he was. I'm not going to tell you though, but if I were to say his name, you would know who he was. He's a high-ranking Red official. He's part of the UPND. And he says to me, we were talking about the president, President Lungu. And he says to me, he says, you know, that man, he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. I knew him before he became president. And even after being president, he's just one of these guys that you can sit and just chat with no inhibitions. The guy just makes you feel at home. He's just a wonderful man to be around. So I preluded that to tell you that what I'm going to share with you doesn't come from a heart of malice. God forbid, no. If anything, it comes from a place of love, really. It's all for love, honey. Like Michael Jackson used to say, we'll do it for love. We'll do it for love. You do it for love of country and love of your leaders, because the Word of God admonishes us to pray for your leaders, to hold them up in high regard. Anyway, so I want to tell you the 2 biggest mistakes that our president made. Of course, any president, is not confined to 2 mistakes. Over the course of any president's tenure, they make multiple mistakes. They call them gaffes. You know the word gaff? Excuse me. Zambian presidents are not immune to gaffes. Gaffes are mistakes. The American presidents do it all the time. The British prime minister does it all the time. There are multiple mistakes, but I'm going to point out two. The first mistake that our president made, in my view, was that he didn't lead on the issue of COVID. I want that to sink in for a moment, because this is something that I'm very passionate about. When the issue of the COVID vaccine came, unfortunately, our president didn't lead on that issue. What I would have preferred to see, as soon as the vaccine came, I would have preferred to see that the president leads the charge with all of his cabinet ministers. I would have loved to see the president circle the wagons on this issue, call a special cabinet meeting, and tell all of his ministers, young men, young women, guess what? Every single one of us are going to get the vaccine, and we're doing it today. He should have done that. He really should have. Of course, people say everything is clearer in hindsight. Everything is 20/20 in hindsight. Do you know what that means? It means that it's only when you look back that you realize, you know what? We could have done that better. We shouldn't have done it that way. We should have done it this way. That sometimes only comes with the benefit of hindsight, looking back. But one of the things I remember, I did a video admonishing and encouraging you, all of you, to make sure that as soon as the vaccine landed, you went out en masse and you got the first vaccine, the first dose. Many of you were steeped in conspiracy theories. You had your own, I don't know where you guys got that from. You got it from the internet. You talked to your mama and your pet's keeper about whether or not to take the vaccine. And you were confused and you were afraid. And I remember I did a video where I said, guys, remember when they first came out with the vaccine, the vaccine against polio? People, just like now, as it was then, people had misgivings about polio, about the vaccine for polio. But after a while, they realized that the vaccine against polio was a great advancement in medicine. And it helped a great deal. In the same vein, by the same token, here it is, we are faced with a crisis the world over. But mankind, through his ingenuity, through his dexterity, has somehow, in record time, managed to come up with a vaccine. And it was dispensed all over the world. Our friends over there in America, by the millions, multiplicity of multitudinous tens of millions of Americans were vaccinated. Of course, you had a remnant, you had a few people that had misgivings, a few people that were steeped in this conspiracy theory. But here's the thing. The president of that country led on the issue of vaccination. It's very important for a president to lead on the issue of the COVID vaccine. The first mistake the president made was that he did not lead on COVID, the vaccination against COVID. And he should have done that. At a time when it was critical that the president do that. Because, guys, I went to get the first dose. Most of the ministers, I won't name the ministers, I spoke to many of the ministers, many of them, that were doubtful. They said, I don't know about that. If you had a few others, like Honorable Doris Celia, who was very, very forthright with the vaccination. Doris Celia was one of the few ministers I heard say, we have to get the vaccine. You have to get the vaccine. Vincent Mwale was another one that said, you have to get the vaccine. You have to protect yourself. You have to make sure that you get that shield around you. Yes, the vaccine isn't a cure, it's a shield. It just aids, abets you. You're better off with it than without it. But unfortunately, our head of state didn't lead there. Now, what ended up happening was, for those of you that went to the hospitals, do you know the majority of the people that were in line getting the vaccine? I'm going to say it, and I'm very ashamed to admit it. I must tell you. Foreigners, non-Zambians, they were the ones who were predominantly in line getting the vaccine. Non-Zambians, foreigners, Abasungu, people, our Asian brothers and sisters. They were the ones en masse getting the vaccine. Very few indigenous Black Zambians were in line taking the vaccine. Why do you think that was? It's because the top brass leadership didn't emphasize the importance of the vaccine. So that was number one. The head of state fell short on that issue. I do love you, though, Mr. President, if you're listening to this. I do love you. And if you're unwell, we're praying for you and we love you. Secondly, the second mistake the president made, and he made this on several occasions, I didn't feel that the president spoke enough about stuff. I would have preferred that when big, colossal, gargantuan issues hit, I would prefer that the head of state is speaking. I would prefer to hear the head of state's voice. Because let me tell you what happens in this vacuum that we live in. If the head of state is not speaking, especially now in this new age of social media. I mean, I'm in my office, but all I have to do is just turn on my camera and my lights, and boom, I've got Wi-Fi in my office, and I'm speaking to you. The thing is, if leadership is not consistently speaking to the electorate, to the people, guess what? Other voices that are not necessarily good voices are the ones that will be speaking. Whenever you have a consistent voice speaking, after a while, that consistent voice is the voice that people listen to. Why? Because the voice that is supposed to be listened to is mute. That's wrong. This is the reason our friends over there in these other countries, they have weekly or monthly or bi-monthly addresses. You know, the State of the Union, you're constantly speaking to your people. You're constantly engaged with your people. You're constantly giving them a message. You're leading the narrative. Because if you don't lead the narrative, guess what? Someone else will. Have you ever wondered, you know, there's sometimes you look at cults, cult leaders, and you think to yourself, these people are just brainwashing people. Who would follow them? You know why? Because they have given themselves that role of leadership, that role of leader, and they are consistent. They show up. It doesn't matter how erroneous they are. Remember Jim Jones? Jim Jones was a despot. He was a cult leader that led his people astray, ultimately killing all of his people over there in Guyana. Not Ghana, Guyana. They followed him all the way to Guyana. He was their leader. He spoke into their lives consistently. David Koresh, another leader, an erroneous leader that led his people in the wrong way, so much so that they all died along with him. Why? Because he was a consistent voice. So, in closing, let me say, the role of president, we know, is not easy. But you have to be consistently engaged. Consistently. I have to be able to hear your voice first. Your voice first. You lead the narrative. Of course, there'll be, divergent views. It happens. Whether or not the president is speaking consistently. Divergent views always happen. But the key is you have to lead the narrative. Lead the narrative. That's what I wanted to share with you. I've been speaking for 27 minutes. God bless you. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Love you. Stay safe, guys. Stay safe out there. It's pretty scary stuff. Just today, one of our Simoson business owners he's been with us for many, many years. I mean, he was such a wonderful guy. He was with us for more than 20 years here at Simoson. I just heard that he died. Mr. Friday, Mr. Phone, all of these Airtel and MTN, they all know him. I remember when Mr. Friday, we call him Mr. Phone, but his name is Friday. He started here at Simoson. He had one little shop. He would sit in one little booth and he would man his own booth, a shop here at Simoson. It was a shop, not a booth. It was a shop. And then he grew from there and he became extremely successful, extremely successful. He was our Simoson business owner for many, many years. And he just recently succumbed to COVID. And it's a sad time for many of our people. Take care out there, guys. But we're going to be fine, ultimately. It's going to take some doing, but we'll be fine. And for those of you that are you're scheduled for your second dose, please make sure you're faithful with that. I would encourage you also to double check your slip, your certificate. When you first got your first dose, double check your certificate to make sure that you don't miss the date. And the date that's indicated on there, make sure that you're there. Make sure that you get the vaccine. It'll help you. It'll help you. Okay? God bless, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other.